Hello everyone, welcome back to Age Nagash, which is a channel dedicated to Age of Sigmar. Now, this is going to be my first video reviewing all the leaked information we have got about the Legions of Nagash Battle Tome coming out this Saturday. I haven't done any videos regarding this book this week yet because I've just spent the last few days just gathering all the leaked information I can, so it's almost as if I have the Battle Tome with me, so hopefully all this information will be correct, will be confirmed on Saturday. I'm almost 100% certain it will be. So in our first video, we're going to start with the Grand Host of Nagash, because it would be unfair for us not to start with our undying god to begin with. So let us start with the battle traits, the first one being the Unquiet Dead. After territories have been determined, but before any units have been set up, you may pick up to 2 points in your territory and up to 2 points anywhere on the battlefield to be grave sites. You may wish to place suitable markers on these points. Instead of setting up a summable unit on the battlefield, you can place it to one side and say it is set up in the grave. You can do this with as many units as you wish. At the end of a movement phase, for each death hero within 9 inches of a gravesite, you may pick a single unit in the grave and set it up wholly within 9 inches of the gravesites and more than 9 inches from any enemy models. Any model that is unable to set up in this way is slain. If a unit still is in the grave at the end of the battle, it is considered to be slain. Gravesites have the following abilities. Ignivating Aura. At the start of your hero phase, pick a friendly summable unit within 9 inches on this gravesite. You can either heal D3 wounds that have been allocated to it, or if no wounds are currently allocated to it, you may return a number of slain models to it that have been combined wound characteristic equal to or less than the roll of a D3. Okay, so that's quite a long one, that one. We touched this a little bit in when they gave us an article about the Grand Host Nagash and telling us about grave sites. I believe when we looked at it then, we knew we could put 4 grave sites on the battlefield, but I think we had to put, we of course had to put 2 in our territory. I think we had to put 2 in the enemy's territory as well. However, now we can put them wherever on the battlefield, which is fantastic because that means we can put them on objectives. So yeah, that's good. What I would say a good way to do this is just to summon your units onto objectives, especially if you can get the first turn and you just want to get those early points in. And with some of the battalions we'll look into in a bit, it may be possible to be able to have a one-drop army now with death, which is fantastic. So I think that's really good. Also, you can put as many summable units as you want in the grave. Bear in mind that if you are unable to bring them onto the table by the end of the game, they will be counted as slain. So bear that in mind if you're really playing for things like kill points and stuff in tournaments. However, you do need to have a death hero within 9 inches of a gravesite to be able to summon a unit through it, but you should be having enough heroes in your death anyway, especially with the Invocation of Death, I believe it's called, which is the whole every hero in the in death apart from fleshy courts have it, and it's a way to basically do the invocating aura of the gravesite abilities, just to heal summable units or to bring back models. I've talked about a lot of that in my previous videos talking about the articles. So no, I think this is very good. I think this would be very useful to, like I say, catch from objectives turn 1, especially if you just go bam, there's 60 zombies or 40 skeletons, which I'll be doing, or maybe even 30 graveguard. I have to see. But no, that's a good battle trait there. It is a big change to what we've been used to with summoning. However, you're going to move the times, and I think this is pretty damn good. And all you need to have is a death hero at the end of a movement phase within 9 inches of a gravesite to trigger it off. And that's really good. You don't even need to roll a dice on a 4 up and a 2 up, which I thought it might have been. So that's lucky there. That is good. And you have to set the unit up within 9 inches of that grave site, wholly within 9 inches, and 9 inches away from the enemy. So in early game, especially before the enemy clocks onto what you're doing, it should be fairly easy to achieve. So that's that, and then the grave sites being able to heal those sunball units is a big plus, especially if I say you put them on objective. You put the marker, because you will get gravesite markers in the War Scroll cards for Allegiance to Nagash Battle Tome. I've seen many people make really nice markers already on Facebook and stuff they're using as the gravesites, and they all look like they're on the right size base for it as well, so that's fantastic. So you're almost making the objective a gravesite itself to just really help you guys keep your units alive. So that's really good for the invocating of aura. That I'll read it again. At the start of your hero phase, pick a friendly sunball unit within 9 inches of this gravesite. You can either heal D3 wounds that have been allocated to it, or if no wounds are currently allocated to the unit, you may return a number of slain models to it that have a combined wound characteristic equal to or less than a D3. So yes, that's the same as Invocation of Death, which the heroes get, and it just, like I said, helps keep your unit that's capturing the objective alive. You can only pick one unit to heal or to return models with the gravesite. However, you can you're only likely going to be controlling the objective with one unit anyway. So that all works well. And then the next battle trait is one of our old-time favourites, being Deathless Minions. Roll a dice each time you allocate a wound or mortal wound to a friendly death unit within 6 inches of your general or another friendly death hero. On a roll of a 6+, the wound is negated. So, yep, we all know what that does. It basically, on average, a sixth of the damage you take for the whole game, as long as you put everything in the right position, is going to be negated. So, that's the same that we all know and love. Good thing they didn't change it. But I don't know, making it so you have to be within 6 inches of just your general, that would have been not so good. So that hasn't changed, that's nice. The next one, and this is specific to the Grand Host Nagash, is Chosen Guardians. Add 1 to the attack characteristics of all melee weapons used by Grand Host of Nagash Morghast units. So that's good. I talked about this when I looked at the article, saying how good Morghast Archai are anyway, and just making them have an extra attack is, why not, essentially. Makes them much more worth their points. Not saying they weren't worth their points already, but it definitely encourages you to take them, which is nice. And then the next one is Legions Innumerable. In your hero phase, you may roll a dice for each friendly ground of a host of Nagash Sunball unit on the battlefield. On a 5+, you can heal up to D3 wounds that have been allocated to it for the unit with a wound characteristic of 1. Return 1 slain model to the unit for each wound that has been healed. So it's basically the same as Invocation of Death and the Invigorating Aura from the Gravesite ability. You just get an extra chance to do it, and you roll for each of those Sunball units, so you don't pick one, you roll for each. On a 5 up, it's not too hard to achieve, it's a third of the time, so if you pick 3 units, one of them's going to get it. They could have made it a 6+, so a 5 up, that's nice. It just means that your unit's going to be so durable, especially how I've mentioned how much of a fan I am of Graveguard in the new book. Being able to bring back so many models of that is just... Like, if we look at Graveguard for a second. Okay, so basic, they can't bring back any models because their banner changed. However, for each one of your heroes that are in range of the Deathless Invocation ability, you'll be bringing back D3 models. So let's just say you've only got 1. So that's D3 models from that. If you've got it in range of the Gravesite, that's an extra D3 models. And then if you get a 5 up on the Legions Innumerable, that's another D3 models. And that's just the basics, so that is really good, and it can make Graveguard so good. That's why I can't wait to actually start trying them out. I've only got 20 at the moment, and like I said before, that usually was more than enough. But now, I am thinking about trying to get 2 units of 30. Now it's going to be quite a lot of building and painting to add on to, like, over 10,000 points of death I currently have. But how fun it's going to be and just how durable those, goddamn units are going to be really fun. So that's something I might do in the future. Okay, so that's Legion in Innumerable, another way to heal models, assemble models that is, or bring them back. So that's good. And then the command ability. So the general of a Grand Host Nagash army has the following additional command ability. Endless Legions. If your general uses this ability, choose a gravesite within 9 inches of them. You may pick a friendly Sunball unit that has been destroyed and set it up again wholly within 9 inches of that gravesite and more than 9 inches from any enemy models. Okay, so I'm not too sure about this one because I hope it doesn't cost points to do for you to be able to bring back that destroyed unit. However, it's more than likely going to cost points, otherwise it sounds like it could be pretty goddamn broken. However, if it does cost points, I honestly don't see the difference between this command ability and just keeping a unit to the side set up in the gravesite anyway to come on later. I would rather just have a unit in the gravesite ready to come back up and use my command ability for something else. If you feel differently, let me know in the comments, but let me read it again. So Endless Legions. If your general uses this command to choose a gravesite within 9 inches of them, you may pick a friendly Sunball unit that has been destroyed and set it up again wholly within 9 inches of the gravesite and more than 9 inches away from enemy models. Yeah, so as far as I'm aware, when I've been playing Death before, if I've got points to summon those, and I have a unit that's been destroyed, let's say a unit of Black Knights has been destroyed, and then I've got enough points to summon 5 more Black Knights, I would just summon the same models that have just died. So it's a new unit, but it would have been using the same model. So I don't really see the point of that Endless Legion's command ability. I might be missing something there, but I'd rather use one of the others. So anyway, so that is the battle traits. Seem pretty good, and there's quite a few of them as well. We're no longer just got this Deathless Minion 6-up save, which was a good one to be fair. Was one of the best standard Grand Alliance battle traits out there, in my opinion. But now that we've got the other ones, it just means that we can compete a lot more with the super battle tome armies, like Zeech and Stormcast and so on. So, with the battle traits done, let's look at the command traits. So the first one, a Master of Death. Reroll results of 1, i.e. rolls of 1 or 2 on a d3. For friendly units affected by a Deathly Invocation ability that are within 12 inches of this general. So that's good. So that's just goes back to what I was telling you about being able to heal this Sunball unit, so to bring back models. What you're doing is you're just making it a more reliable chance of you being able to do this. Because results of 1 for friendly units by Deathly Invocation models. So just reading that through. So it's not just for the general that's bringing back models with his own Deathly Invocation ability. It's just for how many people stack it on one unit, or any units that are within 12. Yes, sorry. Let me read that again. So Masters of Death reroll results of 1, i.e. 1 to 2 on d3, for friendly units affected by Deathly Invocation abilities that are within 12 inches of the general. So yeah, so that's just making all your Sunball units within 12 inches of your general much more reliable on how many you bring in back or how much wound you're healing. So that is a good ability there. I'm a big fan on abilities that help the rest of your army, not just make your general or try to make your general some sort of Death Star. So yeah, I like that. That synergizes very well. So the second one, Chosen Champion. Add 1 to the damage characteristic of melee weapons used by this general for attacks made against enemy heroes. Yeah, so that's not bad. Again, like I say, that's more about making your general a nasty piece of work, which, fair enough. You could take a Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon in a Grand Host of Nagash army, which means that he's doing some pretty horrific things if he's got the Lance, which I suggest you take, and if he makes a charge with the Lance, it goes from 2 damage to 3 damage, with this chosen champion ability, you can add 1 to the damage characteristics of melee weapons used by the general for attacks made against enemy heroes. So if you charge enemy heroes that turn with your Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon, he's now making 4 damage with his lance, which is very, very, very good in my opinion. If you just want your general to be the sledgehammer of your army, maybe you've mainly got things like a lot of death rattle, a lot of skeletons, and a lot of black knights, and you really need that heavy punch to your army. The chosen champion could be a very good command trait to go for, especially if your general is a bit of a machine in combat. So, number 3, Bane of the Living. Reroll wound rolls of 1 for this general for attacks made against enemy units that do not have the death keyword. I mean, it's alright being able to reroll 1s for this general for attacks made against enemy units that don't have the death keyword. The reason I say this is okay, and I'm not sounding so enthusiastic about it, is because, like I've mentioned before, I go to a lot of tournaments where you don't know what armies you're fighting, and maybe surprising to hear if you don't go to tournaments that there are actually a lot of death armies out there. There's a lot of Flesh-Eater Court armies, and there was a few Nagash armies knocking about, and this is in the past. However, with this book going forward, I can almost guarantee there's going to be a lot more death armies in tournaments. So, if you play in your local store, you might be the only death player there, or if you do go to like tournaments and stuff, and you think, I don't end up fighting death that much, maybe 1 in 6 games, I'm happy to make the sacrifice there. In the future, be fighting a lot of death armies. I mean, like in my store, I was the only one doing death since Age of Sigmar came out, and now suddenly with this book coming out, there's been like 3 or 4 other people just starting up death, just suddenly just popped up like that. So if that's similar in most other stores as well, you're going to be fighting death a lot more. So the command ability, Bane of the Living, reroll wound rolls of 1 for the general for attacks made against enemy units that do not have the death keyword, I think is only going to be effective not too much of the time, shall we say, for what you think it would be. And it's not bad, but compared to the other ones we've already mentioned, just the 2 above, I don't think it's as strong. Personally, if you know you're going to be fighting your friend, and let's say he has an Order army, let's say he has Fire Slayers or something like that, yeah, it could be a good one, because obviously he doesn't have death. So depending on what you've got in your army, I imagine if you're going to have a nasty guy in combat for this, like I say, a Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon to make the most out of it, is could be useful there. Right, okay, so that's the Bane of the Living. Now on to the Awe of Ages. At the start of the combat phase, roll a dice for each unit within 3 inches of this general. On a 4+, subtract 1 from hit rolls made for that unit until the end of the combat phase, and that only affects enemy units. So, yeah, when I first read this, I thought, that's pretty sweet, that's pretty good, making the enemy -1 to hit. It's always good, especially how there's a lot of things that trigger mortal wounds on 6s and stuff. And then it dawned on me that actually this is just a not as good version as the Cursed Book artifact for a Death Grand Alliance army, which just makes enemy units within 3 inches -1 to hit. However, this is in a Grand Host Nagash army, so you do get additional abilities, and this is also a command trait. So you can take an artifact as well. It's not replacing your artifact. So there is a trade-off there. Can be very good, especially if you want to get this guy into combat, or you think that the enemy you're going to try and alpha strike him or something like that. It's a good way to neuter their attacks and their capabilities. So, on to number 5, Ancient Strategist. Reroll failed charge rolls for friendly Death Rattle and Morghast units that are within 9 inches of this general. I think this is really good because your Death Rattle always going to be charging 6 inches anyway because of their Hornblower, like we've talked about before. And your Morghast are, I personally take Morghast Archive, so they're the big ones, the big lances, who've got lots of the armour on them. Now, this is good because, like I say, being able to guarantee your charges means that you get to attack the enemy in the combat phase that you want to, and you get to determine, especially how if the enemy's got charging bonuses when they charge against you, because there's plenty of armies out there that do, and now with, like I mentioned, Black Knights being a lot more punchy on the charge, being able to make sure that they can charge is very useful, especially if you summon these through grave sites, because if you summon units through grave sites, that's at the end of your movement phase, so they can't move. So they can still charge though, and the closest they'll be to the enemy is 9 inches. Now, as good as the Hornblower is for the death rattle, always being able to charge 6 inches, unfortunately that's not 9 inches, because that would just be way too broken. However, being able to reroll your charge dice means you could summon a unit and it could have a fairly good chance of charging the turn it's summoned. So that's a very nice one there. And like I say, getting your Morgos Archai into combat when you need to is really, really effective. Especially as they're not a glass cannon at all. Like, they've got 6 wounds apiece, they've got a 4-up save, and then they've got a 5-up save against mortal wounds, followed up by a 6-up save against wounds and mortal wounds if you've got a death hero within 6 inches of them from the deathless minions. However, if you can hit with them first, it just means that you can do your full, like I say, combat effectiveness into the enemy before they can, I don't know, maybe kill one of your Morgos Archai or something like that. Alternatively, your Morghast Harbingers get a bonus on their charge where I believe they roll 3 dice. I believe it is. Let me just double check. I believe they roll 3 dice and then they just add the scores together so they can charge a maximum of 18 inches. Yes, that's what it is. Just double checked. So that means that you can roll 3 dice for your Morghast Harbingers, and then you can re-roll those dice. Bear in mind, this all has to be within 9 inches of your general, so you got to think about that. However, that's really good, and it really helps out your army because 9 inches is a big radius. A lot of this stuff when the bonus is charging, it's normally 6 inches. So, Ancient Strategist, in my opinion, that's one of the best ones. So I will definitely be taking that at some point, especially to help get your death rattle a bit quicker up the board into the enemy. And Morgos Archai, like I say, some of them are really good at charging anyway, the Morgos Harbingers that is, and then your Morgos Archai are such a sledgehammer unit, you really want to attack first of them. Now, on to the last one, Lord of Nagash. Add 1 to attack characteristics of melee weapons used by friendly death rattle units that are within 6 inches of this general. Okay, so I just said the last one was really good, but this one is a bit more exciting. Like I said, the last one, being able to get your charges in when you need to, is fantastic and can be essential. However, making your death rattle add 1 to attack characteristics, bear in mind, you don't have to pick a unit within 6 inches to get it. It's just your death rattle within 6 inches of him. It's really good. Like if you want to run this guy, I'm just trying to think of a low example of this. If you want to run this guy as a White King on a steed and have him with a load of Black Knights, and then on the charge they will be making 3 attacks with their lances, and then if you put your Lord of Bone Commander, be some 4 attacks on their lances, at that point doing freeze the hit, freeze the wound, no run, 2 damage just from the guys on top of the horses. Could be really good. Now, I'd only suggest doing something like that in a sort of low point game where you don't really have any big monsters and more elite monstrous things on your army. However, if you just want to have this guy as a, like I say, still have him as a White King, but have him, let's say, with the Black Axe, and he's moving up with the rest of your Grave Guard and your Skeleton Warriors that are making a nice amount of attacks already. Like the Skeletons, a max unit of those are making crazy amount of attacks. And then, especially if you put the Lord of Bones on them. However, if you put the Lord of Bones on the Grave Guard, they're making 3 attacks each. And then with this Death Rattle, Lord of Nagash ability, now they're making 4 attacks each with the potential to do 2 damage on each attack. Now that's quite a high chance to get, or quite a low chance, to get 2 damage on each attacks, but it's possible. And it would just make their attack characteristics 4 attacks, freeze the hit, force the wound, Mars from rend, 1 damage, but of course if they get a 6 to wound, it becomes 2 damage. So could make that unit really nasty here, and I keep on emphasising on Graveguard as I think they're going to be really good in this battle tone come now. So those are the command traits there. If I just have a look over them again, I think Master of Death is a top one, so that's the reroll result of 1, i.e. rolls of 1 and 2 on a d3 for friendly units affected by Deathly Invocation ability that are within 12 inches of this general. I think that's one of the top ones. Also think Lord of Nagash, like we just looked at, is one of the top ones, which is the add 1 to attack characteristics for melee weapons used by friendly death rattle units that are within 6 inches of this general. And I think Ancient Strategist, which is a reroll failed charge rolls with friendly death rattle and Morghast units that are within 9 inches of this general. I think those three are the top ones, as they all synergize well with the rest of your army. Well, I say the rest of your army, I mean mainly if it's death rattle, but Morghast for some of the stuff. The other three are good for it. You've got like a combat guy. However, I think I've made it quite clear that I'm more I like to buff the rest of my army rather than just making one guy incredibly strong. But, having a Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon, virtually unkillable, and virtually anything he goes up against killable. I do enjoy doing that, but on the whole I prefer making my army stronger because it means that you can hold the objectives better as an army and spread yourself out more effectively. Okay, so they're the command traits. Now to move on to the artifacts of Nagash. So we're going to look at the first one, the Death Forged Chain. This spectral chain winds and twists through torn flesh and shattered bone, knitting the bearer's ruined form back together and allowing them to fight through catastrophic wounds. Okay, so this means at the start of your hero phase, the bearer heals 1 wound that's been allocated to it. Yeah, not bad. You're healing a wound at the start of your hero phase in every one of your hero phases, so that's not bad. Especially, like I said, if you have it on a Vampire Lord. On Zombie Dragon, just means that he's even more harder to kill. And then if you have this on just things like I say, running a White King in the Grand Host and the Gash of army could be a good idea, just for like small games and stuff. So being able to make him heal wounds, it's not bad. And internally, just Vampire Lords that, like I say, already heal wounds. Not a bad artifact. Always being able to heal wounds is important. However, there may be ones a bit better. So we'll look at the second one, the Balefire Lantern. This lantern burns with a sickly purple light and discharges a noxious smoke, which sears the minds of foes who would stray too close. So subtract 1 from wound rolls for enemy units within 6 inches of the bearer. In addition, reroll successful casting rolls for enemy wizards that are within 6 inches of the bearer. So, yeah, this is good. So you're making the enemy reroll successful casting within 6 inches of you, and then reroll subtract 1 from wound rolls, which, as mentioned, like the great example we just said was the Graveguard. They do 2 damage, so they get 6 to wound. So there are abilities that trigger on 6s to wound. It's normally 6s to hit. However, some of it is wound roll, so being able to subtract 1 from that means they can't get it. So yeah, that's not a bad ability by itself, to be honest. And then just the extra making the enemy reroll successful casting rolls for enemy wizards within 6 inches of the bearer. It's good. Now you may be thinking, but a lot of the enemy wizards are going to be at the back, how are you going to get within 6 inches of them? That's true, but there are a lot of wizards out there like, Neferata, Manfred, Arcan, Nagash, Archaon, Alariel, a True Lord Ancient, who quite often get into the fight in combat, so they're going to be near you. You're probably going to get within 6 inches of them, so being able to make them re-roll the successful casting is good, especially how good Death has got in the magic phase now as well. So you can help to improve your unbinding skills whilst making them re-roll the successful casting. So Balefire Lantern, that's not bad. And then number 3, Grave Sand Time Glass. This unamusing memento mori contains the very sands of time, the captured span of a mortal life. With but a motion, the bearer can cause their victims to age centuries in mere moments, eventually turning them to dust and ashes. So, whilst the bearer is on the battlefield, once per game, in your hero phase, you can pick an enemy hero on the battlefield. The enemy hero suffers D3 mortal wounds. At the start of each of your subsequent hero phases, roll a dice. On a 4+, the enemy hero suffers 1 mortal wound. So I like this one as it means that you can pick an enemy. Doesn't have to be within range as it states, and it says once with battle in your hero phase. So I do this turn 1. I would pick an enemy supporting character, maybe their general. More than likely, if I was playing my mate's Bloodbound army, it'd be his Blood Secretor because he's usually so far away. So I'd put it on him. He would immediately suffer D3 mortal wounds, and then on a 4+, he'll suffer 1 each turn. So if you were very lucky, you could kill him by what's that? So you kill him by turn 3 if you're very lucky. So for me, that's one I'm going to be trying out. Also, the narrative behind it, being able to age your opponent, you know, to like throughout the centuries and stuff, is pretty cool. So I can see this one being used. Now moving on to number 4. So the Ossific Diadem. The crown of the blackened bone was crafted from the remains of an ancient necromancer and carries a fraction of the being's unholy power. Roll a dice for each time you allocate a wound or mortal wound to a friendly death rattle model within 12 inches of the bearer. On a roll of 6, on a 6+, the wound is negated. Okay, so I believe I covered this one when I looked at the article, and yep, it just makes your death rattle even more durable and how much you're going to be bringing back with all the new abilities, the models in your hero phase. Yeah, this is good. I know I've been saying a lot of them are good so far, but generally, I'm happy with the artifacts I'm seeing at the moment. I think they've put good thought into it, and a lot of the artifacts you see these days can just be a bit, it was a good opportunity but they missed it, or I can't really see that being used. But it's good to see that Death is going up there with the more sort of competitive armies. So yes, so I do like this one. So roll a dice each time you allocate a wound or mortal wound to a friendly death rattle model within 12 inches of the bearer. On a roll of 6+, the wound is negated. That's good. Obviously depends on how much death rattle you take in the army, but I think quite a few of you who listen to my channel are a big fan of death rattle, so I can imagine this one will be a good one for you. Right, now moving on to number 5, the Amethyst Shard. The silver of crystallized death magic radiates an aura of such horrific potency that it turns living flesh to dust. Once per battle in your hero phase, you can declare that the bearer will merge the shard with one of their melee weapons. Pick one of the bearer's melee weapons. Until your next hero phase, you can add 1 to hit rolls and wound rolls made for that weapon. Okay, so yeah, this is alright. Like I say, obviously it depends on what you put it on. So, you know, if you put it on, you know, something like a necromancer, you know, it's obviously not going to be very good for him. But when you put it on like a vampire zombie dragon, who I have referred to a lot to, but he is just the biggest non-named character, like hero we have in Death, apart from, you know, the Flesh Eater Corpse. So this is why I say, you know, give it to him. Give him the lance. That makes the lance hit on a 2 and wound on a 2. And like I said, this is only once per game, but if you do it so when he charges the lance, it's hit on 2, wounded on 2. Minus, is it 1 or 2, Ren? Let me just double check. Can't exactly remember. But on the charge, it will be 3 damage. So not bad characteristics there. So it is only -1 Ren for that. However, if you really want to make the zombie, your vampire lord and zombie dragon nasty, you give him the command trait that is Chosen Champion. Add 1 to damage characteristics of melee weapons used by the general for attacks made against an enemy hero. So that's the command trait. So that would mean that if you send him up against an enemy hero on the charge, his lance is doing 4 damage. And if you take the Amethyst Shard, it means that once per game, on that time, he's charging the enemy's, like, you know, centerpiece model there, Alaria or whatever. He's hitting on 2 and wounding on 2 with his lance. -1 Ren, 4 damage. So once per game, all this thing to go off, but pretty nasty if you just want to make a nasty big monster of a hero. Okay, so the next one, Terrorgeist Mantle. This ragged cloak is crafted from the hide of an undead Crippletarian and imbued with death magic, allowing the wearer to call upon the creature's lethal sonic screech. In your shooting phase, you can declare that the bearer will unleash a death streak. Pick an enemy unit within 10 inches of the bearer and roll 2 dice. If the total is higher than the enemy unit's bravery characteristic, it suffers a number of mortal wounds equal to the difference. Okay, so this is essentially, it says it's a Terrorgeist one, but essentially it is exactly what the Tomb Banshee Shriek is. So you're giving your hero the Tomb Banshee Shriek, which is not bad. Obviously dependent if you're playing against high bravery or low bravery armies, of course. But if you're playing against, like a Stormcast army, well, isn't the highest bravery, like Liberators only have a bravery 6, and as they have such good saves generally, you're just giving your guy the Banshee Shriek. And the only reason I take a Banshee in a Grand Alliance army for death is just for its Shriek, basically, and it's a cheap hero. So, give your hero this artifact, give him the Banshee Shriek. You no longer really need the Banshee now, unless you're obviously playing Nighthaunt and so on. So that's good. And a 10-inch shooting attack. And this is in each of your shooting phases. So bear in mind, Death isn't a shooty army, and it's quite hard for us to snipe out enemy characters. So I'm liking all these artifacts that are helping you snipe enemy characters, like the Terrorgeist Mantle, which is basically the Banshee Shriek, and also things like the Grey Sand Time Glass, which is you pick a hero, once per game, an enemy one on the battlefield, suffers D3 mortal wounds, and then in each one of your following hero phases on a 4 more, it suffers another mortal wound. So things like that, being able to snipe out the enemy characters that has so much synergy to their army, is what I'm really liking from the command traits and artifacts so far. And this is just the first one, the Grand Host and Nagash. So it's looking good so far, and it's good to actually see them all, all written down, pictured, so we know what we're actually going to get, which is fantastic. So that's the Grand Host and Nagash. That is their battle traits, their command abilities, and their artifacts in Nagash. And then it also says, all wizards in a Grand Host of Nagash army know an additional spell from one of the laws of the dead. If Nagash is included in the army, he instead knows an additional 3 spells from the laws of the dead. So these are the special, these are the 2 extra spell laws you have with death now in the Legions of the Nagash army. And it says your wizards can pick one of the spells. If they're Necromancer, they pick from the Law of Death Mages, and then if they're a vampire, they pick from the Lord of Vampires. Pretty straightforward. However, Nagash, I believe he'll be able to pick from any of the laws, and he gets to pick 3. He gets to cast 8 spells if he's on full strength, and he knows all the spells of Death Wizards on the battlefield. So what this means is, obviously he gets to pick the 3 spells he wants from the law, and then you're bound to have many more wizards in your army, and he will know all their spells automatically. So he'll be able to pick, if you wanted to build your army around Nagash, you should easily be able to make Nagash be able to cast most of the spells you want to from the laws. So he can be a pretty nasty tanky machine, and actually worth his points cost of 800 points, because he hasn't actually gone up or down, which would have been nice to see him gone down, but as he's made a lot more stronger now, and he'll be a lot more present on the battlefield in games. 800, I can suck it up. 900 was far too much, but 800, he can be pretty, damn effective for that, and maybe even some people, probably the people you'll play against, and you will hopefully not make them cry too much, but you'll make them realise how powerful death is. They may even complain that he's maybe a bit underpointed, but that's a discussion and an argument for down the road, shall we say. So, with the Grand Host of Nagash, all its Legion abilities looked at, let's have a look at the battalion for this Legion. So the battalion is called the First Cohort. So the First Cohort is the Great Necromancer's personal guard and regime. Its warriors form an unbreakable phalanx around their liege lord, protecting his physical form at all costs. So the organisation. The First Cohort consists of the following units: Nagash, 1 unit of Morghast, 3 or more units chosen in any combination from the following: Skeleton Warriors, Graveguard, and Black Knights. And then the abilities. So Ceaseless Vigor. Each time a wound or mortal wound is allocated to Nagash, you may pick a Morghast unit from the first cohort within 3 inches of him and roll a dice. On a roll of a 3, you may allocate that wound or mortal wound to the chosen Morghast. And I'll tell you why this is good. So for the first ability is that Nagash obviously can choose the Morghast, and if they're Morghast Archive, they can save mortal wounds on a 5-up, and then they'll have to be within 6 inches of Nagash to do this. So they would also benefit from the Deathless Minions, so they ignore wounds and mortal wounds on a 6-up, so they've got a pretty good chance of ignoring the damage. However, if you don't manage to get your 3-up to do the Lookout Sir for your Morghast Archive, Nagash will ignore mortal wounds. And is it wounds as well, or is it just mortal wounds? Let me just have a look, sorry. So I keep on referring to the War Scrolls, but I'm not always taking these units into combat, so I'm not always too sure. So, where are we? The 5 Morgan. Okay, so it's only mortal wounds he gets to ignore. So, this is how it's going to work. So you have your Morghast Archives, Nagash's bodyguards. When Nagash takes damage, if your Morghast Archive are within 3 inches of him, roll a dice on a 3-up, they can take the damage for him. Now, they will be able to save against mortal wounds on a 5-up, and they'll be able to additionally save against mortal wounds and wounds on a 6-up, as they'll be within 6 inches of Nagash for Deathless Minions. However, if you fail to get the 3-up for the Lookout Sir for the Morghast Archive, or just Morghast in general, Nagash can ignore mortal wounds on a 4-up, and then if he gets a 6 to ignore it, the enemy unit that just did the mortal wound to him takes the mortal wound as a bit of a taste of their own medicine. Following this, if Nagash fails that save against mortal wounds, he gets the Deathless Minion, so the 6-up save against wounds and mortal wounds. So that's quite a lot of information just there, but that just shows how hard Nagash is going to be to kill in this battalion. So I like that. And then the next ability, Eternal Servitude. If Nagash uses the Deathly Invocation ability on a summonable unit from the first cohort, you can treat the D3 result as a 3 instead of rolling the dice. Okay, so this just means you don't need to roll the dice, you just get a 3. Which is, like I say, you don't need to roll the dice, you just get the best result automatically. Which is not bad, especially how, I'll bring it up now, he gets his own special Deathly Invocation, which is basically the best version of it, because he is, Nagash, the Supreme Lord of the Undead, after all. So, his Deathly Invocation. At the start of your hero phase, pick up to 5 different friendly summonable units on the battlefield. You can heal D3 wounds that have been allocated to each unit you picked. Roll separately for each unit. If no wounds are currently allocated to a unit you picked, you may instead return the number of slain models to it that have a combined wound characteristic equal to or less than the roll of a D3. And then his extra little bit is Death Magic Incarnate. You can re-roll any of the D3 rolls when using Nagash's Death Invocation ability, so that's good. However, in this battalion, you don't need to re-roll it because you're just going to pick a 3 anyway. So that means that he can automatically bring back 3 Graveguard into a unit. He can automatically return, a Black Knight into a unit, and he gets to pick 5 units, and not within range of anything, just on the battlefield. So as long as it's there on the battlefield on a 6x4 foot board, he can help it out. So that is nice. And then if we look at the organisation, so you need Nagash. He's expensive, but if you're taking the ground host Nagash and you've got a big 2,000 point army, you really want Nagash in your army. After all, he's leading the army of death himself. Then 1 unit of Morghast. So this is more than achievable, so you can have, unit of 2 is the lowest, and that would cost you 220 points. And then I'd have a unit of 4 really to make the most of their Lookout Sir ability they've got. And it's quite nice how they said that you only need 1 unit rather than, which I could imagine them saying you needed 2 units. So that's nice, and that is just 1. And then you need 3 or more units chosen in any combination from the following list: Skeleton Warriors, Graveguard, Black Knights. So that's good. So it gives you a variety to pick from. So you can just have like 3 huge blocks of 40 skeletons if you want to. What I will be doing is I'll be having my Graveguard as my main units in this, because Graveguard become battle line for a Grand Host of Nagash army, which will be very nice. And you could actually, if you really wanted to max it out, you could potentially, haven't done the maths, but you could potentially have a 1-drop army here, because you have Nagash, who is 800 points. Let's say you have a unit of 4 Morgul's Archives, so that would be 440 points. So you're looking at 1240 points of that. And then how much of Graveguard? What's the discount on Graveguard? Let's just have a look here. So Graveguard, so they're 420 for a unit of 30 of them. So you wouldn't be able to have 2 units of 30. But let's see, if you had like a unit of 30, so we're looking at, what that'd be 1660 points, I believe. Yeah, 1660 points. Then I'd have a unit of 40 skeletons, which would be 280 points. So that would leave me with 60 points left over, because I'd be on 1940 in total. Now, with the extra 60 points, you can have a play around and see what you want to fit in. However, you might be thinking that, hang on, that's, 2,000 point army, I need 3 battle line units. I've got my Graveguard, admittedly, they're battle line in a Grand Host of Nagash army. And then skeletons are just battle line. However, I'm missing a third one. Well, that's because Morghast become battle line in a Grand Host of Nagash army if Nagash is the general. So, yeah, it's possible you could have a 1-drop army here with this battalion. Now, there's probably a better way to make that 1-drop army with this battalion. I'm just trying to think on my feet here what could be a good list. However, you do only have 1 hero in your army, admittedly, which could be a problem. However, Nagash is such a badass on his own, essentially. So it might make up for it. There could be a couple of things you could struggle, but like I say, play around, make a list. But you could actually make a 1-drop army here if you really wanted to. So that is the battalion, and it comes in at, let me just double check in my notes. It comes in the first cohort, so 160 points for that Washclaw battalion, which isn't too much. It could be less, could be more. It's making Nagash a lot harder to kill. It's making your other units a lot harder to kill off, as you'll be able to regenerate more of them. So I think 160 is a fair price. I mean, there's a lot of battalions now that are near 200 or even beyond 200. So happy with 160 points of that. Means that you could potentially have a 1-drop army there. And then the Grand Host of Nagash can ally with Flesh Eater Courts. It's only 1 ally, but then again, Flesh Eater Courts are the only ones who are not going to be in the battle tome. So that is my look at the Grand Host of Nagash. I'll also, shall I have a look at what the spells are going to be, or shall I leave that? I think I'll leave that to the next video. However, I hope you've enjoyed my first look at basically all the elite information I've managed to find. I've literally spent the last 3 evenings trying to just scrape it all together to give you the best impression I can on what the book's going to be like. And I want to do 1 legion at a time. So I thought, I start off with the big daddy, the Grand Host of Nagash. And I think it sounds really good, We'll just start with the battle line. So, Graveguard, a battle line. And then Morghast, our battle line, if Nagash is the general. The battalion looks pretty goddamn good. And the command traits are good. There's some ones there that, can make your general into, a pretty nasty combat machine. Which is important to say, if Nagash is your general, he obviously can't take command traits or artifacts, that's still very much the same. No-name characters can take him. However, you don't take him as a general, Like I say, you still have Grave Corners battle lines, so that's pretty good, and there's some command traits there, but would really help your Death Rattle, which would be really nice to see. And then the artifacts, there's some ones there that really help your Death Rattle, help you be able to snipe the enemy a bit more, and to just generally help out your whole army. And then and also in the battle traits, with the grave sites. The grave site's going to be constant with no matter what legion you take. However, with Nagash being able to roll a dice for each one of his Sunball units, and in your hero phase on a 5+, he gets to in the hero phase they get to heal that many D3 wounds, or they get to bring back D3 models. So that could be really good, the 1 wound models. And then, so I personally think that's really good. And also you get to add 1 to attack characteristics for your Morghast. And like I say, they're pretty damage dealing unit already, so being able to make them have more attacks is really good. So that has been my review. I know I've sort of talked about quite a few different parts here, and I sort of maybe diversed quite a little bit and went a little bit off topic when I was talking about them. But I just really wanted to give you my sort of thoughts and opinions on them, and how I could see them being used in the game. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Make sure to watch out for my next one, which will be the Legion of Sacrament, for Nagash's second-hand man, Arcan himself. And like I said, that'll be the next video, and that should be up here relatively soon. So thank you very much for watching, and if you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe and comment down below, as that does, like I say, really helps me make more videos and to make them as quickly as I can to when I get the information. So until next time, remember, Nagash is all, and all is one in Nagash.